So for tonight, we'll go ahead and start off with a couple of stories from the Bible. When Jesus came down from the mountainside, and this is in Matthew 8, starting in verse 1. When Jesus came down from the mountainside, large crowds followed him. A man with leprosy came and knelt before him and said, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. "I am willing," he said. "Be clean." Immediately he was cured of his leprosy. Then Jesus said to him, "See that you don't tell anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer the gift Moses commanded as a testimony to them." When Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him asking for help. "Lord," he said, "my servant lies at home paralyzed and in terrible suffering." Jesus said to him, "I will go and heal him." The centurion replied, "Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof, but just say the word and my servant will be healed, for I myself am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. I tell this one go and he goes, and that one come and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it." When Jesus heard this, he was astonished and said to those following him, "I tell you the truth, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith. I say to you that many will come from the east and the west and will take their places at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the subjects of the kingdom will be thrown outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Then Jesus said to the centurion, "Go, it will be done just as you believed it would." And his servant was healed at that very hour. And the last one. When Jesus came into Peter's house, he saw Peter's mother-in-law lying in bed with a fever. He touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she got up and began to wait on him. When we talk about healing, this is pretty much what we think of, yeah? Like when we refer to the miraculous gift of healing, we have visions in mind of crusades where men like Billy Graham are calling people up and placing a hand on individuals who are sick or injured or whatever. We think of the people down at Bethel, the various individuals there, and they're laying hands on people and seeing their bones get healed, their teeth, their cavities get fixed, all these kinds of miraculous things that just blow our minds. Healing as a gift is by far the most misunderstood and misrepresented gift in the entire Bible. See, we see examples of it with Jesus, but we also see a lot of examples that we don't pick up on necessarily. The thing about the healing gift is that it's deeper and bigger than just these miraculous events. There's miraculous healing that happens as God works people through things. And the thing of it is that he does it on his own accord. See, kind of like with prophecy, when we talked about prophecy. Prophecy is more than just one thing. It's got a lot of different annotations to it. If we oversimplify it, we say, well, it's somebody talking to God. But honestly, you could take the same definition and use it to describe praying. It's not the same thing. The thing is, with healing, we do the same thing. It's seeing people physically healed. It's not, it's more than that. When Jesus forgave people of their sins, when he cast out demons, in many ways he was healing those individuals. A lot of them came afflicted with something. And in that process, they came to him and they received healing. And there are some who receive their healing in the form of something much slower. See, we only recognize this miraculous gift as being what it is in the Bible, as being these events. But the gift of healing runs a lot deeper than that. Sometimes God gifts you in a way that gives you the ability to bring healing in other ways, other than just the physical manifestations. Sometimes the gift of healing comes in the form of being gifted to counsel. Because unfortunately, like what we struggle with is recognizing the different aspects of our person and how those different aspects of our person can be affected and afflicted by the enemy and by the world and by the damage that's been done to us by those around us. See, we recognize physical healing. We see that all over in the Bible. But what we don't recognize are things like emotional healing. See, when we pull apart the different parts of the spirit or the person, you have your physical body, you have your soul, and you have, or heart is another good kind of way to flip those around, or your spirit and your spirit. So, physical body, soul, spirit. So your physical body is your physical body. It's this part of us that we all see. We see the fingers get broken, the cuts and scrapes, bruises when we fall. When we get sick, it's the part that's vomiting its guts out and all these other types of things. It's got the fever and the agonizing pains. The fatigue. Yeah. The soul, or the heart, whichever term you prefer, is the seat of our emotions, our will, in many ways our person, what we wish, what we want, what we desire. It's this kind of innate quality to us that exists. You know, that can be hurt too. Like that can be afflicted with damage. Whether it's from the world around you, from the emotions that you've endured, your soul can be hurt. Your spirit can be hurt too. See, the thing of it is that the spirit is that part that interacts with the spiritual realm. That's the part that the enemy tries to attack so often. See, and the thing of it is whether he's attacking your spirit or your physicality, it's all in an attempt to afflict your soul. Because see, in a lot of ways, it's at the center. So you're going to take on, so when you're afflicted in the spirit, you start taking on spirits, to use biblical descriptions. A spirit of fear, a spirit of anger, a spirit of whatever, despair. And those cast a certain shadow on your person, on your soul. And it afflicts your soul and affects it in different ways. It changes the things that you want, the way that you perceive things. It changes your emotions. It changes all these different things that become a part of you. Or rather, it changes all these things when it becomes a part of you. So when we get hit with a spirit of confusion, for example, it affects us in a way where we don't know what we want. We don't know what we can do. We just sit in this place of doubt and fear and confusion, of course. And we can become impulsive, we can become pushy, we can become selfish, soulish, all these different things that can afflict us in this way that take us to places that we don't necessarily want to go, and certainly not where we want to be. Or rather, mindsets that we don't want to be in. So we have to kind of acknowledge that there are different parts of who we are, and each of these things can be affected by damage. They can all take damage. So when we take the gift of healing and mitigate it to just, laying on hands and seeing legs grow out, that limits the capacity of this gift to do what God has intended it to do. Because there's even another example where Jesus, they have the man lowered down through the roof of the house, and he's been unable to move for so much time. And Jesus tells him that his sins are forgiven, and to pick up his blanket and walk, and that's what he does. He didn't have a physical ailment. His physical ailment was generated by damage to his soul, which was caused by unforgiveness, guilt and shame, and the spirit of those things that had lingered on him and had become a part of him so much that he couldn't even exist anymore in the physical realm. You ever see that? You ever feel that? We've all had circumstances, if we really think about it, we've all had circumstances where we have had things afflict us physically or spiritually that change how we exist. Whether it's that they change our perception so completely that we can't see anymore, it blinds our soul. And suddenly everything in our world becomes such that we can't receive, we can't see, we can't understand anything outside of this very, very tiny, dark realm. Talking about last week where prophecy was so important because it helps take us out of those places of loneliness and those places that the enemy tries to draw us into where we're all by ourselves and we're just stuck in this constant realm of negativity. Well, in many ways, the gift of healing is just as important for that, because this is where our souls can be taken, and it's just damage there. It's almost like, it's not damage in the sense that you're being beaten or anything like that. On the contrary, it's damage in the sense that you're starving to death. You're being left to the elements. You're not being taken care of anymore. You start suffering in all these different ways. See, the thing of it is that no matter what it is, when you suffer like that, you're gonna have to heal afterwards. And see, when we find our souls stuck in that dark and shadowy place where it's dying inside, where you can't feel love, you can't feel hope, you can't feel happiness or joy or anything like that, when you start to be unable to see the blessings in your life, all you can see is the negativity. All you can see is the suffering. All you can see is the pain that you feel deep down inside your heart, because it's become a part of it, and your heart has been hurt. Then you find yourself stuck there, and you start to degrade. It starts to affect you physically, emotionally, spiritually. You'll retract from God. You'll retract from people around you. You frown more. You darken. People with depression, anger issues, you see it on them a lot of the time. Their face changes. Their countenance changes. You can feel them when they walk into the room. They have a heaviness on them, a darkness. This is the reality of our existence and how we are afflicted by these various different things, and how it can affect us in such a way where it's not necessarily that we're being beaten on or trashed on. It's not like with spiritual warfare where the enemy's over there taking the whip to you. On the contrary, it's you feeling so abandoned that you can't accept people taking care of you. Where you're feeling so alone that you can't see people coming around you to love you. when you feel so hopeless that you see no future but to just lay and die. We need healing from that stuff. And that's where this gift really becomes miraculous, because it extends beyond just a broken leg being healed. It goes deeper than that. You can receive healing from for your soul, for your spirit. And that's always a really hard thing, because if we're honest, we don't really value those other parts of ourselves. See, whenever we talk, like I said, when we talk about healing, we all think of the physical stuff. And let's not discount the value of that, because when you see people out in the world, and you got some street preacher going around and laying hands on people, and they're having broken legs and blindness healed, that's an incredible thing. And that brings the reality of who God is right into that situation, because that you can't fake that. I'm technically blind, legally. So if somebody walks up and heals my eyes, I can't stand back and say, well, maybe it was a fluke. No, I have degraded retinas from glaucoma. One of them barely exists anymore. It's just a few minor threads. When things like that get fixed because somebody walked up, put a hand on you instead of prayer, that changes everything. I remember this one church that I went to, and a guy had his tongue growing back. He had his tongue cut off. Yeah, I don't remember exactly even why it happened. But he came up, got prayer, and he grew his tongue back. And it was just like, oh, okay, that's pretty real. I remember one time my sister out in Minnesota called, and she was in a panic because our uncle was sick. He was going to die. He, I don't even remember what it was. He had something going on in his heart. Some kind of blockage or something like that. And my sister, she doesn't believe in God like she does, but she's not like a strong believer, And I told her, because she was panicking about it and scared, and she was gonna lose her uncle, and I told her, I was just like, pray for him. And she was just like, I don't believe in the doctors. I was like, don't worry about the doctors, believe in God. Just pray for him to be healed. So she prayed for him. The next day, she called me up really excited because he got better. They had done scans the day before and seen the blockage. She prayed, and the day after, there was nothing, and he was fine. And he was going to live when he had been given a week to live. These things are... These kinds of things have a significant effect on our spirits, on our souls, when we see these kinds of things manifest. There's just that reality that God's there and that he is who he says he is. And we suddenly have to face that. But see, if we make it just that, then we cheapen it. And we spend too much time focused on just that, because it's incredible. It's kind of like your favorite part of the movie. Like, think of any movie and like your favorite part. It's like that. But if you're only focused on your favorite part of the movie, you miss how good the rest of the movie is. It's just a microcosm. It's big, it's important, it's really cool, it's great, it moves you. But there's a lot more to it. And sometimes the story behind it is so important as to truly appreciate that one moment. And sometimes the story after it is changed by that moment, but is also extremely important. So in talking about the gift of healing, we have to first acknowledge that it's more than just the flashy kind of things that we see. It's also the stuff that we experience, and those things where we see people healed of things like depression, anxiety, where people can be filled with joy and life. Because there is a place for us to be able to step into something more, and when we pray for this gift, to receive this, to also understand that, you know, it's more than just that. Because one of the big problems with this is because we're so focused on the physical, we miss those other parts, and as a result of that, we oftentimes will discount the entire gift. For example, you know, we might go to God asking him for healing in this particular thing. God, I keep waking up with, like, in a panic and my heart's having problems. Please heal my heart. Well, we self-diagnose. And the problem with self-diagnosing is that we have a limited perception, especially when our limited perception is purely on the physical stuff. And we're not actually considering our spirit and soul as being things that actually affect us and afflict us and can have an effect on the physical. I mean, when we talk about emotions and emotional damage and trauma and things like that and what they can actually do to your body, there's a lot that can happen. There are a lot of nervous responses and fear responses that our bodies go through, physical things that happen as a result of the emotional damage, pain, fear, all those different things. We're not really raised with that. All we see is that, you know, when you fall down and skin your arm, you have a boo-boo and that needs to be fixed. But we don't appreciate that the reason why we fell down was because we have an anger problem and we were throwing a temper tantrum. And maybe the boo-boo isn't as important as that tantrum thing, as what's causing that. And maybe we need healing in that particular place. And there was a really a good teaching that I sent to Jeremy the other day about the forgiveness of sins, and about the way that when it was by Graham Cook. He was talking about how when we come to Jesus and are freed of our past, we're changed. And in many ways, we have to accept that change has happened and live that way, rather than holding on to the old man, the old person that we were before the Holy Spirit came. We have to live in the new and have that part replaced by what Jesus is putting in us with his Spirit. But that's not necessarily what I'm talking about in reference to this. What I'm talking about are the things that happen after the fact. Because the truth is that there are plenty of us where we go to church and we get hurt by the church. We get hurt by people in the church. We get hurt by people who claim to love us. And that affects us. It hits our soul, it hits our spirit. And as a result of that, it causes damage that needs to be healed. And sometimes we're not very good at stopping to let that healing take place, or receiving it, or even being the one to pray for it. See, in a lot of ways, the reason why we start with prophecy as being the thing to pray for in this, as we talk about these different giftings, is because being able to talk to God and determine, hey, this is what we need to do, can be extremely important when it comes to healing. Now, the thing of it is that a lot of people with the gift of healing, what will happen is they'll just feel their hands start burning inexplicably. They'll be praying, or maybe they won't be praying. I know one guy who would talk about how anytime that anybody was around that needed healing, his hands would just start burning. And he'd just have to ask around and find out who it was, and then he'd pray for them. But the thing of it is that when we are able to talk to God, you can really just ask him. And ask him what they need prayer for. Because sometimes it's not, Jesus, with that example of the man being lowered down, Jesus could have walked over and said, "Life be in your body." But that wouldn't have done anything, because that wasn't what the problem was. And the reason why we start off talking about this particular subject, about just the reality of what healing looks like and what it is, as opposed to delving into what the different kinds of healings and things like that, and rather drawing our attention to the fact that there are different parts of our bodies that need healing, different parts of our being, I should say, not bodies, different aspects to our person, is to draw us out of that place where when, if I go up and I feel like I'm supposed to pray for this person about something, and then God doesn't make the healing happen, maybe there's something more, as opposed to just dismissing it and saying, "Well, I give up." Rather, instead, maybe we can sit for a moment, pray longer, and say, "Well, maybe I don't see what's actually going on. Maybe they don't see what's actually going on. Maybe there's something that runs deeper than that. And maybe that's what we need to pray for." I remember one time, one of my cousins, she had a hurt knee. And I asked God, I felt like I was supposed to pray for her knee. So I asked her to sit down and I prayed for her knee. And nothing happened.
What's that?
What?
Why?
Well, I'll tell you.
What?
I prayed and nothing happened. I was really confused by that. I was just like, "Well, God, you told me to pray for her knee, right? I mean, you told me to do that, right?" And he was just like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, why didn't it get healed?" He's like, "Did you consider that maybe what I wanted to talk to you about was that I didn't want to heal her knee?" I'm like, "Okay, well, that doesn't make sense." And he explained to me that that the reason why her knee was hurt was to keep her from walking down to this bar where an ex-boyfriend worked. Because she would try to arrange something, because at the moment she was feeling really desperate about finding somebody. So I asked her about that, and sure enough, that's what it was. She had that particular thing going on. So there was a place to talk about this part in her heart, where she felt so desperate and so lonely. And that is where there was a place to pray for healing. It ran deeper than just the physical thing. The physical thing was something that was there to prevent her from doing something foolish, kind of to protect her in a way. And we don't always appreciate that. There are a lot of people's testimonies that begin with a story about, they were going to be a pro basketball player and then their leg got hurt. They couldn't play basketball anymore. They were going to be a pro skater and, they broke their ankle and couldn't skate anymore. So they come praying for that. When in reality, that ended up being the means by which God could finally get their attention. Because maybe he had something more planned for them than to be this pro whatever that they may or may not have ever been capable of being. See, we spend way too much time focused on physical. It's important, but it's also important to be aware that there's more going on inside of us than just our flesh and blood. Our flesh and blood is where we feel the pain, the anguish of it, but a lot of times that pain and anguish is coming from somewhere else. So these are things to be aware of. as we proceed regarding this particular gift. We'll take a break for a moment and come back to it. Oh, whatever. All right. So let's talk about why we don't receive the gift of healing. Both in terms of receiving it when God says this is what you have and you can go do it, and both in terms of this is what I'm doing for you. Now we talk about the understanding that there are multiple facets to our person, that the physical, the soul, and the spirit all have wounds that can be inflicted on them, and all of them are going to require healing. Which means sometimes when we misidentify one, we can perceive that God has not healed us in a certain way, when in reality, what we're not understanding is that God's addressing something else. And that happens a lot, truth be told. When we have traumas, but they're manifesting as physical symptoms, we look at physical symptoms. It's the same way that when doctors diagnose patients, they're constantly having to look past the symptoms and try to find the root cause. Sometimes it is just a physical ailment. Sometimes it's something deeper. When God looks at us, he sees into us everything that's wrong, everything that's off, and exactly what needs to be taken care of. And that leads us into the first order of things to talk about, and that is faith. Now there's a reason why one of the passages here is the servant, or the centurion's servant, when Jesus healed him. Because that centurion illustrated a level of faith that not a lot of us have. See, when Jesus came, when he sent that man, because he doesn't even show up to Jesus himself, depending on which book you read. If you read Matthew, it says the centurion's there. If you read, I think it was Mark or Luke, they tell you that the centurion sent servants. So it's not even that he was there personally being faithful in the face of Jesus. He sent other people. Now whichever story you ascribe to give it perspective's sake and to address the potential claims of contradictory messages and whatnot, Luke went around and asked a wealth of different apostles and people who were there in order to put together the Gospel of Luke. Whereas the Gospel of Matthew was done by Matthew, the apostle, long after the events of Jesus and his life with him. So it was a lot more off of old memories. So, at the end of the day, like, you can only go so far with old memories. But the point is that when it comes down to faith, what the centurion illustrated when he came to Jesus with this request was this particular thing of just, hey, you know what? You don't actually need to come to my house. All you need to do is say that he is healed and he'll be healed. And I believe that. I know that to be true. That is the faith that I have in you. See, one of the problems that we run into with healing, and this is both in terms of being the person doing the praying for the healing and being the one to receive the healing, is that we run into this issue of faith all the time. And usually it's like a guilt thing. Usually it comes down to, well, God didn't heal this ailment. Maybe I just didn't have enough faith in him to do it. Maybe it was me. And the reality of it is that doesn't actually have that much to do with it. It can at times, but it's not very often. There's a reason why we start this message off talking about the different aspects of person and the way that sometimes what we need to have healed is not necessarily what we're asking for. I have a pain in my chest. God, please heal my chest. Well, in reality, it's emotional because your heart's been broken by your now ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend. That's what life is. You need healing from that, not from your heart. God sees that kind of stuff, and that's where the faith comes into play. That's where we need to talk about faith. Is our faith in God? See, one of the problems is, and even like talking about self-diagnosis, the reason why we talk about that as well is because the thing that we run into with self-diagnosing is that we're basically putting ourselves in a judgment seat and dictating that this is actually what's wrong with me, God. Please heal me. I know that this is what's wrong. It has to be this. Please heal me. But see, if we have the gift of prophecy especially, then we should be able to go to God and just ask him, what's wrong with me? I need help. I'm hurt. Can you heal me? But a lot of us don't do that. A lot of us instead, we opt to try to figure it out on our own based off of our feelings or whatever. But see, there's a place for us to grow beyond that. We're not called to only have specific gifts, per se. We're called to thirst and hunger for all of them. I mean, even Paul's petition in 1 Corinthians 14, which we read last week, was to eagerly desire the gifts. Mm-hmm. Well, and he specifically goes on to say, eagerly desire prophecy. Want this. God wants you to want this. And the impact that that gift can have on all the other gifts is this cascading, incredible thing. As when we talk about these spiritual gifts, as well as the redemptive gifts, when we talk about spiritual gifts in general, there's no reason why you can't have all of them. The only thing that seems to have a limitation are offices, and that's not entirely for sure either. It's just usually God doesn't give somebody more than one because that's really all you need. It's part of who you are. But these are not part of who you are. These are just tools in your toolkit. There's no reason why you can't have the master set. Unless for some reason God has explicitly determined that you shouldn't have it, which is rare. And oftentimes it comes down to the simple question of, do you want it? Which we'll get into in a moment. But first, to finish the discussion on faith, is in receiving the gift of healing, in both sides of it, there is a place of faith. And to talk about faith is to ask the question of, what do we really believe about God? First off, do we even believe that we can be healed? Do we even believe he will? Do we believe he actually cares enough to do it? And then the other question is, when we're asking for this healing, are we doing it because we want him to prove himself? To prove that he cares? To prove that he actually will do it? Because if that's what we're doing, oftentimes God won't do it because that's not the point. He's not a monkey who's going to dance for you. He's the creator of the universe, and we need to understand that and appreciate that. It's his breath that gives our bodies life, not the other way around. Our belief does not empower him to exist. So where our faith is placed is something that we need to consider. And that's not even the end of it. So do we believe he will? Do we believe he wants to? Do we believe that he cares? Do we believe in him at all? See, the interesting thing about healing and the gift of healing is that oftentimes even our willingness to go and receive is determined based on our belief. If you have a hardened heart to the idea of healing, you probably won't receive it. And it has nothing to do with God's inability to reach you. It has everything to do with your ability to even be willing to go. If I go up and some guy shows up, and he's praying healing over people. And I say, well, hey, I've got this sore knee. All right, God, let's see if you're for real. Prove it. This is just a small thing. I'll saunter on up there, ask for prayer. It doesn't happen. Oh, look, proof God isn't real. I win. Do you see the problem with the heart there?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not a matter of, this person's trying. It's a matter of this person doesn't want it to begin with. They don't believe to begin with. And this is a common thing. And a lot of people, it's very, very, very buried. I've had many occasions where I've gone to God asking for things, and what I really wanted, like at the core of it, was him to prove that it was true, or prove that I was right, or prove something. And as a result, I didn't receive the blessing because I had an agenda.
Mm.
And one of the biggest problems that we run into when we talk about the gift of healing is agenda. See, our faith simply needs to sit in this place of resting in the idea that God loves us and wants to take care of us, and that he has all the ability in the world to fix us, and maybe it's not the way that we see it, maybe it's not the way that we believe it will happen, however, he has a way. And even as the healer, that needs to be your heart as well, where it's like, all that your job is to lay hands on and pray, and the rest is God's from there. Because see, again, like prophecy, healing is something that you don't do yourself. It's something that God does through you, like any of the miraculous spiritual gifts. These are God doing things. This is the Holy Spirit moving. You're a vessel. And that's not to say that you're not important or anything like that. That's not to diminish the value of the individual who is carrying this gift. It's simply to say that when we start making it about ourselves, we start losing things. We start losing opportunities. We start not seeing it as much. Because we're so proud, the Spirit doesn't have a place to be. And see, in this particular place of talking about this heart of faith, that this is where we need to be. Simply this: God loves us and he wants to take care of us. God loves these people and he wants to take care of these people. God can, he does, he will, and we need to be open to how he will. Not the other places where I want to be healed so I can go back to doing this thing that I want to do. I want this person to be healed because I really like them and maybe they'll love me if I can help them be healed. See, we need to check our own agendas all the time because our motivations, our motives can very much so determine whether or not we receive, and certainly whether or not it happens. Our heart is the biggest thing that can get in the way when it comes to healing. And that's both in terms of receiving and being the one to pray, do the praying. I know that I myself have had to run into this many, many times because I don't always believe in God to do it. In fact, over years, when I initially received the gift, I had every bit of belief that it was always going to happen. And then when it didn't, I got really confused and wondered what was going on. Like that first story was just one example. There were many others where God, I prayed for people and nothing happened, and I found myself just baffled.
Mm.
Somebody else would pray and they'd be fine, and something crazy would happen, but for me it was not. And over time, that kind of created a circumstance where I didn't really believe anymore as much. So there was a part of me that was very much so restrained. And I didn't see it. I didn't understand that. I didn't recognize that I didn't quite have the faith that I had initially. So, as a result, I found myself, I'd go and pray for people, but it was very forced.
Mm.
I did it because God told me to. I did it because I felt like I was supposed to, not because God could, would, or wanted to. It wasn't about God at all, not really. So there is this place where we need to check our motivations in our hearts specifically, and whether or not we really have faith in God. And if we don't, that's okay. It's something that we need to pray for. That He can break through those walls that say we don't and aren't going to believe. But we also do need to be inordinately real about this. Because again, we all are trained to say, I believe. And I always remember, it was Francis Chan, actually, who was doing a message. He was talking to a huge crowd of pastors. And he was posing this question of, do you believe in healing? And he kind of like sat there and he was like, yeah, we all believe in healing, but do you actually believe in healing?
Mm-hmm.
Do you actually believe it will happen? If you pray for it, do you actually believe God will do it? It's a quiet room. But see, we're all conditioned to say, yeah, we believe in that. Even though in our hearts, in our souls, that's not really true. And sometimes we really need to weigh that. Maybe there's a wound there that causes that, and maybe that needs to be healed, ironically enough. Or maybe we've just never experienced anything. We've never seen anything like that. So it seems foreign and impossible. And that's okay too. But it is something to look at. And maybe what we need is that experience where God does move. Because the truth is that we talk about faith and receiving. And when I talk about receiving, I need to be very specific in saying that receiving doesn't always mean that the gift doesn't happen. Oftentimes it means that we just don't perceive it. As an example, I can't think of a specific example, but there have been plenty of times where God did things that He said He was going to do to bring about healing in my heart and life. And I didn't see them because I didn't believe they were going to happen. Even having my wife, Heather, is one example where I prayed for healing relating to loneliness and the pains of just different things brought onto me by past relationships that didn't work out, and just the rejection of that. And I prayed for that and prayed for that and prayed for that healing, and I knew it was like an emotional thing. So it wasn't like I was looking for physical signs, but it was the kind of thing where I just kept praying for it and then not receiving it. I just continued to hurt. And the thing was that eventually God put me in a situation where I suddenly had somebody and I wasn't having those pains anymore, and it was like that healing came. But I didn't see it. I didn't appreciate it. I didn't understand it right off the bat. Instead, I kept focusing on what I didn't have. Because that was my world. Again, talking about the way that the spirit and the physical can affect the soul and change our dynamic. My dynamic was very much so shifted this one way. And it wasn't until Heather actually prayed for me and that I was able to even receive. It was more than her, there were others as well, but I was able to receive the reality of what was there as opposed to the fallacies that I lived in. See, perception can be the biggest thing that can draw us back from this. And like I was saying, God's power is not mitigated by our lack of faith. One of my own major experiences in being healed was when I was healed of depression. I've told this story before, but the thing of it was like, it was a wound that I had had since I was just a little tiny kid. I was 3 years old when it hit, and it had been there, so I didn't know what it was like to not have it.
Mm.
And I remember sitting there at church, and the pastor talking about depression and anxiety, and he offered for everyone to stand up and, at the end of it, to be prayed for who wanted to be healed of depression. And I wanted the healing, I just didn't want to stand up. I didn't want to be a spectacle. And a part of me maybe didn't even believe that God was going to do anything with it. Which is true. I didn't. So when he said everybody stand up, I had decided inside my mind, I was just like, well, God can hear me. He doesn't need me to stand up. He knows my heart, and if he wants to, he can heal me. And then it felt like the chair was dumped out from underneath me.
Mm.
These benches were bolted into the ground. It doesn't work that way. So, but it felt exactly like that. Like somebody had walked up behind my chair and just lifted from the bottom. And I was up on my feet, I got prayed for, and my depression was healed. And for a long time I was free of it. And it felt weird. Luckily the church brought it back. But that's another story. The point is, though, is like, God wasn't stopped by my lack of faith. He wasn't stopped by my unwillingness to stand up. He kind of forced the issue to an extent. But he knew I wanted it. Which brings me to the second point that we need to talk about regarding healing, is desire. See, the thing of it is this one is oftentimes kind of missed in a lot of ways. We don't really spend a lot of time on this topic. What do you want? See, it's one thing to sit in a place where you don't believe. It's one thing to sit in a place of faithlessness, but it's a whole other thing to sit in a place where you want to be faithless and you want to not believe because it's more comfortable. See, if we're honest and accountable, a lot of people don't want God to be real. It seems kind of like anathema to what a lot of people claim, especially in the church, but it is the truth. If God's real, then there's an accountability that comes with that. If God's real, there's a responsibility that comes with that. If God's real, there are ramifications that for our lives and souls and the way that we think and act. If God's real, then love is real, and that's absolutely terrifying, because that means that we have to be vulnerable, and vulnerability is terrifying, because that means we leave ourselves open to people who could hurt us, and they will, and that's terrifying. It's a lot easier if God's not there. It's a lot more comfortable if these kinds of things aren't requested of us. Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me. He calls us to take our old selves and to die, to take that old person who we have been before we've known him, before we've received the Spirit, and to hang that on a cross and let it die so that we can be reborn like he was reborn. That's hard. That means your entire old identity, everything that you valued about yourself, everything that you thought was really cool about yourself, everything that you were, has to go away and be replaced by something new. And if you don't believe in God in the first place, that's a baffling request. But if you don't want to change, then that's an impossible request. Because it means that no matter how many times you say that prayer, you're not going to mean it. You're not going to want God. And see, the same is true with any form of healing. If we don't want healing, we're not going to ask for it, and more than that, we're going to sabotage it. If we don't want God to be real, we're going to look to confirm our bias and maintain him as not real. I remember a friend of mine who was an atheist, and I was telling him stories out of the Bible. It was just a random conversation. I didn't even mean to like witness or anything like that, but I was making comments about how in Job, Job is the oldest book of the Bible as we understand it. And yet, in that particular book, God talks about things that we've only discovered through science in the last 50 or 60 years. He makes reference to things talking to Job that we have only just discovered. And I remember mentioning that offhand to my friend, only to have his wife tell me a little while later about how she had been kept up the night before her and I were hanging out, because he had been up all night on YouTube looking up videos trying to figure out what was going on, and they were basically just things to like to confirm his own views. So it was basically just anything and everything he could find in order to hold on to that and prove that what he had just heard could not be true. And this is a thing that we do. Confirmation bias is a real thing that we run into on a continuous basis, and we provide ample opportunity all the time where we want to stay where we're at. And that's the thing about healing, is you can't want that. See, the funny thing about it is, like, when you do street ministry and you go around and you pray for people to have healing, the thing of it is that these people may not know God, but they know that they want this healing to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they don't come with their wounded knee and say, well, let's see if God proves himself. No, they're just like, okay, well, I don't know. You can pray for it. But they know that they want it healed. That's the thing that's easy about physical things. Like, that's the funny part about this. It's why we focus so much on it. Part of it, I guess, is it's because it's something we can see and feel and so easily. And it's why we miss all the other aspects of this gift. But when you're hurt, when you're physically hurt, you want to be fixed. When you're emotionally hurt, that's not necessarily true. And when you're spiritually hurt, that's not necessarily true. You want to pretend like nothing's wrong, or you want to pretend like you have it all together. Pride has a way of doing that. A lot of things have a way of doing that. And sometimes we just want to stay hurt, emotionally and spiritually, because we feel like it's going to give us some kind of power. We're going to be able, sometimes we're vindictive enough that we're going to be able to hold on to that thing that hurt us, and we're going to go to God when he goes to judge us and say, look what you did, God. And he's going to say, yeah, but look how hard I worked to try to make it better. And look how close I was to you. And look how you held on to this even though I fixed it. Like ammunition that you were going to try to shoot me with. Well, there's your shot. Sometimes we want to hurt God because we've been hurt, and we want to punish somebody. A lot of times that person who we want to punish, the projection ends up falling from God. So even beyond faith, there's this reality of what we want, and we need to be real about that too. Do I actually want him to heal me? Or do I not? Does it make me feel better in some sick way to be sad? Does that justify my perception? so proud that I refuse to see any other way in life than this which I have been given because of the afflictions that have been laid upon my body and my spirit? Am I willing to let my soul be healed? Or do I want to keep my soul exactly the way it is? This is a big thing that can stand in the way of receiving healing. And if I'm honest, well, forthright, I suppose, is a better way to put it. It's one of the biggest things that can inhibit us from being the person to illustrate the gift of healing. Because sometimes we cannot want to heal somebody. We have judgment for them. We have judgment for ourselves, we have judgment for God, we have all these different things that stop us because we don't want things to change, we don't want to be challenged, we don't want things to be different than what they are. Because if they're where they are right now, then they make some sense because we're comfortable with them. And a lot of us don't want to let that go. And the last thing that we'll talk about is hope. Because the thing about healing, and see, underneath the faith and the desire, the thing that falls underneath those two runs deeper is hope. Our lack of it, our plethora of it, our desire to have it. See, if we have no hope in God, then we have no faith. If we have no hope in something different, we have no desire to change. Where do we draw our hope from? And where does it exist in? Do we have hope that this person will be healed? Or do we have hope that we will be healed? Or do we just believe that we're stuck this way? Or they're stuck this way? Or that God's not going to move on their behalf? That there is no future for them, or for us, or for whoever. Like I was telling Kevin a little earlier, the greatest thing that fuels God and his desire to heal us is his love. But the biggest thing that we need to ask ourselves is, does that inspire hope in us?
I just want to see if she's gonna smack you.
Because unfortunately, like, it's a big deal, and it's an important question
It would also be a good test to see whether you ask her.
to look over, to ask, to pray into. We don't believe in his love, then that's fine. We obviously won't hope in that. We don't want his love, that's fine too. We obviously won't hope in that. That's the point, though. So in the face of these three things, there's prayer to be had and time to be spent in prayer. And even just in meditation, to be real, to think, to feel what's true for you. Do you believe? Do you have faith in God and healing? Do you want it? Really? And do you have hope that this can or will? Do you have hope in God and His love for you? These are the three questions that we ultimately need to kind of grapple with, because they kind of are the big things that stand between us and healing.
Mm.
And then we can pray, then we should pray for this gift. And even if you don't get answers to these, even if your answers to these questions are bad, no, I don't have faith in God. No, I don't want faith in God, want anything from God. No, I don't hope in Him. You should still pray for healing.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe that's going to be the way in which God takes you out of that place. Pray for healing in your own body, and pray to be the one to pray for that gift. Ask Him for it. Because there's a place where the heaviness of this is meant to be lifted with joy. And a new beginning and a new life that stands far outside of the broken, damaged souls that a lot of us carry. But instead to exist in a place of light, joy, and peace. Knowing that God's there. Feeling that healing for ourselves, and wanting other people to feel it as well. Because I know when I received healing for my depression, I wanted other people to be free too. So healing became a very, very important gift and a very important thing to experience. And I remember one of my favorite events that happened was with the first Bible study that I worked with. And I sat down with this girl from the group and I prayed with her. We went out on a camping trip and she got really sick. And I felt like I was supposed to pray for her, so I prayed for her. I remember specifically, it's ironic sitting here and talking about the want thing, because it was not something that I've ever connected with this gift, and yet the question that I had to ask her on that particular day before I prayed for her was, do you want Him to heal you? Whatever the case, we prayed and she was healed. And then, as if that wasn't enough, one of the guys from the group went home after the trip was over, and his mom was sick, and he sat and prayed with her and asked her that same question, and then she was healed.
Mm.
It was fantastic, like, to have that kind of experience, just to see, and very joyous to see it spread. And to see the kingdom of God moving in this way, to see the Holy Spirit doing what the Holy Spirit does. There's so much joy that comes from this gifting. It's why people who have the gift of healing often have so much joy. Like, healers can be the most annoying people in the world if you're depressive. Because they have this pesky, chipper attitude that just grates. If you're the kind of person that wants to be sad, you can't stand these people. Because they have so much joy. And it just seems fake, and then suddenly they pray for healing in people, and people are getting healed, and you're just like, I want to say you're fake still. Stop it.
It's so funny because that makes total sense. Healers I met have a lot of joy, and I'm like, wait, I just never thought that's connected. So it's interesting.
They're watching physical manifestations of God's power all the time. How do you not take joy in that?
Mm-hmm.
It's annoying for other people, but it's something that we're all called to participate in. Like, it's not like it's an exclusive little club of really happy, annoying people. It's meant to be a big, huge world of happy, annoying people. It's a good thing. It's a good thing to have. It shouldn't be clouded by dusky views of hopelessness.
It shouldn't be viewed like this is like Fallout. It's
Yeah.
the wasteland.
Yeah, no. A lot of people hold that view more than they should. And that's not necessarily something for us.
Mm-hmm.
So, we'll go into a time of prayer for a little bit. And again, the 3 things to pray for. And just think about, it's not even just praying about it. Sure, you can ask God for yourself, but, you know, even just think about it and weigh it and feel it for a moment. Do you have faith in that God will heal, or wants to heal, that he cares? Honest answer. It doesn't matter what it is. And just sit with that for a moment. Feel that. Pray into that. Yes or no? Doesn't matter. It's the same response. Pray into it. Do you want healing? Do you want change? Do you want a new life? All these things. Honest answer. Whatever that answer is, yes or no, kinda, it doesn't matter. Sit with it. Feel it. Pray into it. Talk to God about it. Do you have hope in him? Do you have hope in general, at all? Whatever the answer to that is, sit with it, feel it, pray it. And when all that is said and done, just pray for healing. Pray to receive the gift. Pray to receive the healing itself for you. Invite the Holy Spirit to do what the Holy Spirit does, even if you don't want to. It's not a fake it till you make it thing, it's just an invitation. That's what I got.